I remember when the world moved slower, when stone roads stretched endlessly beneath golden sunsets, and Roman banners fluttered in the breeze like quiet whispers of power. I was there, not as an emperor nor a soldier, but as a quiet observer, a soul drifting through centuries, watching the rise and the inevitable fall. It began long before the collapse. Rome, majestic, sprawling, proud, was a place of order and grandeur. Marble columns reached toward the sky, and fountains whispered in courtyards where senators spoke in soft Latin tones. But even in the days of triumph, I could feel it, the tremble beneath the surface, the strain of a world stretched too thin. As time passed, the empire grew heavy with its own glory. The borders spread far, from misty Britain to the sun-scorched sands of Egypt. But with every conquest came the weight of distance. Faraway provinces became harder to hold, harder to hear. Whispers of rebellion, murmurs of change. They floated through the air like autumn leaves, drifting gently to the ground. I remember the cold breath of the north, the Germanic tribes stirring in their forests, not out of malice, but survival. They saw the cracks in Rome's walls, the tiredness in her eyes, and so they came, not as conquerors, but as seekers of warmth, of land, of peace. Yet Rome, afraid and proud, pushed them away, and the wind grew colder. In those days, emperors came and went like flickering candle flames. Some were wise, others cruel, and many simply overwhelmed. The throne, once a seat of divine rule, became a prize for soldiers and schemers. Civil wars bloomed like storms, each one weakening the roots of the once great tree. Then came Constantine, who turned Rome's gaze eastward, founding a second capital, Constantinople, beautiful, fortified, and new. A flicker of hope, but also a split. Two Romes, two hearts beating in different directions. The Western Empire, the old weary half, began to falter. Wealth flowed eastward, leaving the western cities hollow and dim. The roads fell quiet. Trade slowed to a whisper. The armies, once iron and discipline, thinned and scattered. Rome, the eternal city, stood still, majestic, but tired. And then came the footsteps, slow, distant at first. The Goths, led by Alaric, stepped into the pages of history, with the soft crunch of boots on frost. They were not monsters, just people, like you and me, pushed too far, denied too much. Rome had once called them allies, but now they were invaders. I watched as they reached the city. The gates, heavy and old, groaned open. No battle cries, no screaming mobs, just quiet dread. The city, unprepared, was taken, not burned, but humbled. It was the year 410, and for the first time in 800 years, Rome had been breached. The world exhaled in disbelief. Even then, Rome lived on. She limped through decades of struggle. The Vandals crossed the seas. The Huns thundered in from the east. Their leader, Attila, called the scourge of God, and yet Rome stood, bruised but upright, until, finally, in 476, a boy named Romulus Augustulus, barely a teenager, wore the imperial purple. He would be the last emperor of the West. Quietly, without bloodshed, he was deposed by a barbarian chieftain named Odoacer. There was no grand finale, no fiery end, just a soft closing of the curtain. The Western Roman Empire was no more. But sleep, gentle dreamer, for endings are never truly ends. The eastern half, the Byzantium, lived on for 1,000 years more. And even as Rome crumbled, her soul traveled through time, in languages, in laws, in roads and arches and dreams. I still see her sometimes, in the quiet corners of cities, in the ruins bathed in moonlight, in the soft Latin etched on forgotten stones. Rome fell, yes, but she also transformed into stories, into memories, into the echoes of who we are. Now rest your eyes. Let the weight of centuries carry you softly to sleep. The world has turned many times since then, and it will turn again. And I'll be here, watching, as I always have. Good night.